Today, the Vice President, I'd like to talk to you about how my administration is dealing with our situation on the southwest border. Now, these actions alone that I'm going to announce today aren't going to fix our entire immigration system, but they can help us a good deal in better managing what is a difficult challenge. On my first day in office, some of you may recall who cover this area, and you cover it well, I sent Congress a comprehensive piece of legislation that would completely overhaul what has been a broken immigration system for a long time. Cracking down on illegal immigration, strengthening legal immigration, and protecting dreamers, those who with temporary protective status, and farm workers, who all are part of the fabric of our nation. But congressional Republicans have refused to consider my comprehensive plan. And they rejected my recent request for an additional $3.5 billion to secure the border and funds for 2,000 new asylum personnel, another asylum officers and personnel, and 100 new immigration judges, so people don't have to wait years to get their claims adjudicated, which they have a right to make a claim legally. And the failure to pass and fund this comprehensive plan has increased the challenges that we're seeing at our southwest border. No one knows this better than the Vice President. And to truly understand what's happening there, it's important to step back and see the bigger picture here. You know, I know it's hard to see, but because our politics has been so divisive, you know it's getting much better, you've all observed, but it's been so darn divisive that it clouds the picture.
President, why did you decide that now is finally the right time to visit the southern border? Republicans have been calling on you to do this since the beginning.
Because Republicans haven't been serious about this at all. Come on. They haven't been serious about this at all. I wanted to make sure that I knew what the outcome, at least the near outcome, was on Title 42 before I went down. We don't have that yet, so I had to operate. I don't like Title 42, but it's the law now. I have to operate within it. My prediction is, it's nothing particularly insightful about this, Title 42 is going to go away before the end of the year in terms of the Supreme Court, my prediction. And then we're going to have to use Title 8. 8, right? Am I right? Yeah, Title 8. 8, 9. And which we can implement what we're doing here plus some other things. But so I wanted to make sure there was a rational way in which we could begin to announce it. But I couldn't wait once the Supreme Court ruled that they're not going to make the final decision on Title 42 for some time, for another, who knows, probably not till June, in that range, although I don't know that for a fact, to be able to lay this out. But look, my Arcus is waiting to impress you all kidding aside. Let me close with this. Our problems at the border didn't arise overnight and they're not going to be solved overnight. It's a difficult problem. It's clear that immigration is a political issue that extreme Republicans are always going to run on. But now they have a choice. They can keep using immigration to try to score political points, or they can help solve the problem. They can help solve the problem and come together to fix the broken system. Before Congress adjourned for the holidays, some Democrats and Republicans, a few of them, got together, both sides up in the Senate, and decided they were going to put together a comprehensive plan on immigration. But the Republican leadership and other Republicans, I don't know exactly who did it, rebuked it and rejected it out of hand. It broke up, just like they rejected my plan 2 years ago, just like they rejected my recent request for an additional $3.5 billion to secure and manage the border with more holding facilities, better transportation, additional funding for 2,000 new asylum officers and personnel, 100 new immigration judges to more rapidly adjudicate for people when they come here, and how much, and so much more. Think about it. I mean, if this were something, if we had to have 100 more immigration officers to see to it that we're able to import something we needed very badly, it wouldn't take very much time to get it, would it? It'd be real done. Or conversely, if there are criminal gangs coming into the nation, but when it comes to immigration, it seems like it's a better issue for them than trying to solve it. Look, we need more resources to secure the border. Yet again, extreme Republicans have said no. Many Republicans agree we should do something. But it's time to stop listening to their inflammatory talk. It's time to look at their record. As I've always done when I'll sit down with anyone who in good faith wants to fix our broken immigration system. And it's hard. It's hard on the best of circumstances. But if the most extreme Republicans continue to demagogue this issue and reject solutions, I'm left with only one choice: to act on my own, do as much as I can on my own to try to change the atmosphere. Now the House has elected a new speaker. I can call him and congratulate him. I'm ready to work with him, or any Republican in Congress, to make progress for the American people. But like many Americans, I was disappointed that the very first bill the Republicans in the House of Representatives passed would help wealthy people and big corporations cheat on their taxes at the expense of ordinary middle-class taxpayers. And it would add $114 billion to the deficit. Their very first bill. House Republicans campaigned on inflation. They didn't say, if elected, their plan was to make inflation worse. Plus, House Republicans have introduced another bill, blocking action that would help lower gas prices and help consumers. And on top of that, House Republicans are preparing to vote on a national sales tax bill. National sales tax, that's a great idea. It would raise taxes on the middle class by taxing thousands of everyday items from groceries to gas, while cutting taxes for the wealthiest Americans. And if I'm not mistaken, what they've introduced, it also would totally eliminate the IRS. Feels good, except all gonna be sales tax. Go home and tell your moms. They're gonna be really excited about that. Come on. Is this how House Republicans are starting a new term? Cutting taxes for billionaires? Raising taxes for working families? Making inflation worse? Well, let me be very clear. If any of these bills make it to my desk, I will veto them. I will flat veto them. I'm ready to work with Republicans, not this kind of stuff. If they try to cut Social Security and Medicare, which Americans have been paying into every paycheck since they've ever got their first paycheck, I'll use my veto pen to stop that as well. But if Republicans want to work together on real solutions, so lower inflation, create more jobs, build an economy that works for everyone, I'm ready. And Senator Scott's not the only one. Senator Johnson of Wisconsin, his own party plan. He laid out Social Security should be in the chopping block every year. But look, in his case, as I said, he wants to do it every single year. Let's remember what this is all about. Some of you are on Social Security, or your parents or grandparents are. You earned it. You earned every single penny, and you paid into every paycheck you ever got. From the time you were a teenager, you had money taken out for these programs. They're more than government programs. They're a promise we made. Work hard and contribute, and when the time's come for you to retire, you'll be there. We'll be there for you to help you out. It's been a sacred trust, a rock-solid guarantee. Generations of Americans have counted on it, and it works. The number of seniors living in poverty has plummeted since Social Security was created. And now these guys want to cut it. I don't get it. I really don't. I don't know who they think they are. We saw on Tuesday night Republicans don't like me being called out on this. They were not very happy with me pointing this out. But their words speak. Look, I know that a lot of Republicans, their dream is to cut Social Security and Medicare. Well, let me say this. If that's your dream, I'm your nightmare. Because by the way, that may be redundant. I think they already think I am. But if anyone tries to cut Social Security, we're going to stop it. If anyone tries to cut Medicare, we're going to stop it. And look, when I called Republicans out on this on the State of the Union, it sounded, and they started yelling liar, not all, but started yelling liar, liar. And I said, that means you all are for keeping Social Security? And they all stood up, said, yeah. I said, well, we got a deal. Sounded like they agreed to take these cuts off the table. I sure hope so. I really mean it. I hope so. Because they stood up, the vast majority of them said, yes, we will not cut Social Security or Medicare. Now, granted, I'll believe it when I see it, but we're going to both lay down our budgets very soon. That's in stark contrast to, by the way, there's an awful lot of really good Republicans, but the MAGA Republicans are a different breed of cat. No, they're not bad or good. They're very different. There's kind of like, in my view, sort of two Republican parties. And I've served a long time. Some of my closest, as that joke goes, but not a joke, my closest friends in government have been my Republican colleagues in the Senate. And folks in Congress, they want to eliminate a lot of health care coverage, those mega Republicans, increase costs for millions of Americans, and make deep cuts in programs that families and seniors depend on. And that's what's at stake now. 2 years ago, when I was sworn in, the economy was reeling and the pandemic was raging. We lost over 1 million people. Hard to believe, but over 1 million people. And our healthcare system was at the breaking point. And all the healthcare workers here remember, better than anyone, those dark, dark months as the number of COVID deaths kept rising. Hospitals had to have patients in hallways, literally setting up tents in their parking lots in a situation where, because everything was full, every bed was full. That's what we're up against when I took office. We immediately got to work. We turned it around. So folks, look, MAGA Republicans are calling for defunding the police departments and defunding the FBI now. That's a good one. I like that one. Well, guess what? And they refuse to provide funding that's going to keep communities safe and secure. We talk about crime. Well, it's outrageous. My budget invests in public safety. It includes funding for more training, more support for law enforcement, at a time when they expect to play many roles. We expect our cops to be social workers. We expect them to be psychologists, mental health counselors. You know, more cops are killed responding to domestic violence calls than anything else. Do you know that? Well, folks, I don't want to defund them. They need more help. We don't expect a cop to be everything from a psychologist to a counselor. These departments need more investment in this kind of help. And we're going to fund proven strategies for accountable and effective community policing so cops know the communities they serve. And the communities know them. We got to get cops back on the street. Back on the street in the communities they know. Where they know the people, where they stop in and they know the guy who owns the liquor store. They know the preacher who runs the local school, the local ministry. They know the person who runs the local grocery store. When we did that in the Biden crime bill, crime just plummeted because they know folks. I remember I was in Wilmington. My son used to be the Attorney General of the state of Delaware. And he'd have his folks go out and knock on the doors. And there was a lady who called who lived on 4th Street in an area that's kind of tough. She had rented one of these old Victorian homes, you know, the kind that have a outcropping on the corner of the... And she could hear the gangs below getting ready to do what they're going to do. But she's scared to death to call anybody because she knows if they found out it was her, they'd be back. So my son made sure the cops gave their phone numbers to the people in the neighborhood with a commitment they'd never say where they got the information. And guess what? Violent crime dropped because she could pick up the phone and call and say, they're outside. I can hear them. They're talking about this we're going to do. Cops need help. There's some bad cops, by the way. What we did, my Justice Department just did in Louisville, Kentucky, was long overdue to put those suckers in jail. And by the way, how many cops you know like bad cops? I don't know many. Not a joke. We're going to provide 100,000 more community policing officers nationwide and invest in tens of thousands of more school nurses and school counselors and mental health help. So I think there should be a minimum tax for billionaires. No billionaire should be paying a lower tax rate than a construction worker, a school teacher, a firefighter, a cop, a nurse. I mean it. It's wrong. It's simply wrong. If you didn't live through this, you'd think I was making it up. And meanwhile, guess what my mega Republican friends in Congress are up to? The Speaker of the House went to Wall Street last week, proposed huge cuts in important programs, cut all discretionary spending by 22%.
including ones I've just named, programs millions of working and middle-class Americans count on. At the same time, he and his MAGA Republican colleagues are pushing some tax giveaways for the wealthiest Americans and biggest corporations. They'd rather see kids and seniors struggle to eat what they need. People on Medicaid lose their health care. Veterans lose access to doctor's visits, and that's part of it, by the way, not a joke. Then cut subsidies to big oil that made $200 billion, and big pharma and the wealthiest corporations. We're not even talking about raising the tax, we just stop the subsidies. The same old trickle down dressed up in MAGA clothing, only worse. Because this time, they're saying if they get their way, they will if they don't get their way, if Biden doesn't agree with them and agree to all the cuts and these tax increases for others, working people, they're going to let the country default on its debt. This is a debt that took over 200 years to accumulate. The last administration alone increased the debt by nearly 40% in 4 years. And every single time, they passed the debt ceiling without any question. Default would be totally irresponsible. I mean, it would mean cuts in Social Security, Medicare, higher interest rates for your credit cards, car loans, mortgages. The entire economy would be put at risk. Moody's, you know, that economic operation that comments on the economy, they said the Republican plan would cost us 780,000 jobs. 780,000 jobs. Working and middle-class seniors paying the price. The speaker likes to quote President Reagan. I love these guys, how they selectively quote people, including makeup quotes for me. Well, President Reagan made it clear. We pay our debts. Here's his quote from him. He said, "The United States has a special responsibility to itself and to the world to meet its obligations. It means we have a well-earned reputation for reliability and credibility, two things that set us apart from much of the world." And we're doing all this having already, in the first 2 years, reduced the deficit by $1.7 trillion. That's occurred. That's happened. It's done. And the budget I proposed that I proposed back on March 9, I think it was, the first couple weeks of March, that budget, if it were to be passed, would cut the deficit another $3 trillion. $3 trillion over the next 10 years. Unfortunately, I won't say Republican because I think they're pretty well divided, but our MAGA Republicans in Congress are threatening to do all this progress by letting us, quote, default on the debt unless we agree to their demands. The two are totally unrelated. Whether you pay the debt or not doesn't have a damn thing to do with what your budget is. What your budget is. Where you're going to spend money. How you're going to raise the money. What are you going to cut? They're two separate issues. Two. And let's get it straight. They're trying to hold the debt hostage to us to agree to some draconian cuts, magnificently difficult and damaging cuts. But I'll get into that in a little bit. But unfortunately, they're threatening to undo all this progress by letting us default. Their budget that they proposed, that was attached to their debt ceiling increase, but they tied them together now. I want to make that clear. You all know this, I know, but for the listeners, they've tied it together. They say we're not going to increase the debt that every president has done for the last 6 million years here. Never hadn't done anything but that, unless you pass our budget as we're proposing. Now, their budget would put 21 million people at risk of losing Medicaid. It would cut federal law enforcement by 28,000 personnel. 28,000, FBI, DEA, etc. It would cut 100,000 teachers and support staff. It would cut 30 million veterans' health care visits. And I increased the VA budget because the veterans were in such difficult shape, having so much trouble getting appointments and the like. According to Moody's, not the Democratic Party, according to Moody's, their budget plan would eliminate 780,000 jobs. Say it again, it would eliminate 780,000 jobs, according to Moody's. And America's debt has accumulated over 200 years, and my predecessor, in the 4 years he was president, increased it by that total debt by 40%. 4 years. 4 years. Let's be clear. And by the way, even during that period, all the Republicans voted to, the Republican Party voted to increase the debt limit, like the only responsible thing you could do. At any rate, let's be clear. This is no small part about paying our bills that were accumulated not by me, not by my administration, but by former presidents and previous Congresses. I was in the Congress, so I voted for some of them as well, but I wasn't president. We're not a deadbeat nation. We pay our bills. And some of you cover a lot of foreign policy in other countries. You know this is becoming an issue in other countries. What's the United States going to do? Are they really fooling around with not paying their debts? And so, look, next week I'm going to reiterate to congressional leaders that they should do what every other Congress has done. That is, pass the debt limit, avoid default. And as I've said all along, we can debate where to cut, how much to spend, how to finally move the tax system where everybody begins to pay their fair share or continue the route they're on, but not under the threat of default. Let's have the normal arguments. That's why we have a budget process, to debate and open so you all can see it and know exactly what it is that they want to spend the money on, what they want to cut it on, who pays taxes, who doesn't pay taxes, and us as well. We're ready for that debate. We're ready for that debate. We've made a lot of progress. Now, one reason we have inflation fall by 2/3 without losing jobs is that we're seeing corporate profits start to fall as well. We have more to do, but I like what I said. Inflation is now at the lowest point it's been in over 2 years. In fact, we have the lowest rate of inflation among the world's major economies. Every major economy in the world, our inflation rate is lower. We're growing faster. We're economically more advanced than every other major country in the world. It's down from 9% to 3%, and it's going to continue to go down. While there's more work ahead, earlier this week, the Washington Post suggested Republicans may have to find something else to criticize me for. Now that inflation is coming down. Maybe they'll decide to impeach me because it's coming down. I don't know. I love that one. Folks, there's a lot of really great Republicans out there. I mean that sincerely. But we'll stand up to the MAGA Republicans who voted against the Inflation Reduction Act and now are attempting to still repeal it. In the name of the MAGA Republicans who have been trying for years to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, deny tens of millions of Americans access to quality, affordable health care. Today is the start of a new deal for patients where Big Pharma doesn't just get a blank check at your expense and the expense of the American people. On my watch, health care should be a right, not a privilege in this country. There are other ways the Inflation Reduction Act is lowering health care costs as well. As mentioned, beginning in 2025, the Inflation Reduction Act caps total out-of-pocket drug costs for seniors on Medicare at $2,000 a year total, even if their expenses even for expensive cancer drugs that could cost $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year, max, cumulative, $2,000. The law already requiring that drug companies that raise prices faster than inflation have to pay the difference to the government between what they charge and the rate of inflation. This quarter, seniors are paying up to $449 less per dose for drugs that hike their prices faster than inflation. In addition to the law, my administration is cracking down on junk health insurance plans that look like they're inexpensive but too often stick consumers with big hidden fees. No one likes to be taken advantage of. We're also cracking down on surprise medical bills. You've all heard of the stories of people who choose a hospital that's in their insurance network, then get a surprise bill of thousands of dollars because the hospital assigned an anesthesiologist, for example, who wasn't in their network. Well, not anymore. Preventing 1 million surprise medical bills every single month when we have changed this law. Low prescription drug costs is part of a much broader vision for the country. Growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not from the top down. Because when the middle class does well, everyone does well. I'm a capitalist. If you make $1 billion, fine. Just pay a little bit in taxes. Everyone does well when we do it this way. The Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal, I don't think they meant it as a compliment originally, started referring to my economic policy as Bidenomics. Well, guess what? It's working. Really, really, really matters. And one more thing. Every American expects FEMA will show up. And when they're in the middle of a disaster, and I'm calling on Congress to make sure you're able and have the funds to be able to continue to show up and meet the needs of the American people to deal with immediate crises that we're facing right now, as well as the long-term commitments that we have to make to finish the job in Maui and elsewhere. Showing up for the moment to save the lives is critically important, but that's just the beginning. Just the beginning. And some of this is going to take months and years to make sure we restore the people to the circumstances they were before this disaster hit. And as I said, and to the people of Florida and throughout the Southeast, I'm here to make clear that our nation has your back, and we are not going to, we're not going to walk away. We're not going to give up. We're not going to slow down. And again, we're in a situation where, how can I say it? Some of my colleagues, my former colleagues in the Senate and people I work with every day in the United States Senate think that this disaster relief money we're asking to continue to finish the job so far and have enough money to continue to work to save the American people, their lives, their homes, their well-being, is somehow, I don't know, not needed, or I'm not even sure what their thinking is. But we need this money done. We need this disaster relief request met. We need to do it in September. We can't wait. But I'll take a few questions from the work. We're putting the work in and we're getting the results. But we've got to get the word out. We have to get it out. Just think about it. There are those in Congress who are sowing so much division and willing to shut down the government. You know it better than anybody. Just a few months ago, after long negotiations, myself and the new speaker, we agreed to spending levels of government will fund essential domestic and national security priorities, while still cutting the deficit by $1 trillion over the next decade. Now, a small group of extreme Republicans don't want to live up to the deal. So now everyone in America could be forced to pay the price. Let's be clear. If the government shuts down, that means members of Congress, members of the U.S. military are going to have to continue to work and not get paid. A government shutdown can impact everything from food safety to cancer research to Head Start programs for children. Funding the government is one of those basic responsibilities of Congress. And it's time for the Republicans to start doing the job America elected them to do. Let's get this done. You know that. What? Excuse me, you having trouble hearing me? I know anyway. In the meantime, I want to say a word about those in Congress who are willing to shut down the government. Just a few months ago, the Speaker of the House and I agreed to spending levels for the government. We were up right to the very edge, almost reneged on our debt, and that we're going to fund essential priorities and still cut the deficit by $1 trillion over the next decade. Now, a small group of extreme House Republicans, they don't want to live up to that deal, and everyone in America could be faced with paying the price for that. We're changing it. We made a deal. We shook hands. We said this is what we're going to do, and now they're reneging on the deal, which is not much of a surprise these days. Well, I guess we're actually technically afternoon. Last night, Congress passed a spending bill that's going to keep the government open. And it's good news for the American people because the government will not shut down and a needless crisis will have been averted, saving millions of Americans needless pain. And that means more than 1,300,000 of our troops will continue to get paid and their families will be cared for. Tens of thousands of air traffic controllers and transportation security officers are going to stay in the job, get paid, preventing unnecessary delays at airports all across America. And millions of families will continue to have access to critical food and nutrition assistance, especially programs for women and infant children, and so many other programs. And the vital work in science and health, from cancer research to food safety, is going to continue, as will long-term disaster recovery monies for communities devastated by wildfires, superstorms, and droughts. Social Security Administration will be fully funded, which means that we'll be able to fully serve the needs of the American people and the elderly. But folks, the truth is we shouldn't be here in the first place. We shouldn't have gotten here in the first place. It's time to end governing by crisis and keep your word when you give it in the Congress. A few months ago, after a long negotiation between myself and the Republican Speaker of the House of Representatives, we came to agree on a budget agreement precisely to avoid a manufactured crisis that we just witnessed. But the last few days and weeks, extreme MAGA Republicans tried to walk away from that deal, voting for deep, drastic spending cuts from 30 to 80% that would have been devastating for millions of Americans. They failed again, and we stopped them. But I'm under no illusions that they'll be back again. You know, where I come from, when you make a deal, you give your word, you keep it. You give your word, you say, I'm going to do what I said I'm going to do, and you do it. You keep it. You keep your word. And I expect the Republican Speaker and Republicans in Congress to honor their word and keep the deal they made months ago when they tried to threaten us with almost international bankruptcy by not paying our debts. That includes comments made for fully funded services for our veterans and fully fund the needs of defense of our nation. You know, protect we have transformational investments we're already making to deal with the climate crisis. We are, protect Medicare's ability and power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. We pay the highest prescription drug prices in the world. We're finally making progress. Although the Speaker and an overwhelming majority of the Congress have steadfastly supported Ukraine to defend itself against the aggression and brutality of the Russians' attack on women and children, in addition to the military in Ukraine, there's no Ukraine funding in this agreement. Despite that, I did not believe we could let millions of Americans go through the pain of a government shutdown. But let's be clear. I hope my friends on the other side keep their word about support for Ukraine. They said they're going to support Ukraine in a separate vote. We cannot, under any circumstance, allow American support for Ukraine to be interrupted. I fully expect the Speaker to keep his commitment to secure the passage and support needed to help Ukraine as they defend themselves against aggression and brutality. And folks, overwhelmingly, there's an overwhelming number of Republicans and Democrats in both the House and the Senate who support Ukraine. Let's vote on it. And I want to assure our American allies and the American people and the people of Ukraine that you can count on our support. We will not walk away. The vast majority of both parties, I'll say it again, Democrats and Republicans, Senate and House, support helping Ukraine and the brutal aggression that is being thrust upon them by Russia. Stop playing games. Get this done. This agreement today, while averting an immediate crisis, ends in, I guess it's 45 days now. It's already moving down, just before Thanksgiving. Quite frankly, I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of the brinksmanship. And so are the American people. I've been doing this, you all point out to me a long time. I've never quite seen a Republican Congress or any Congress act like this. This spring, MAGA Republicans brought us to the brink, threatening to default on America's debt for the first time in over 200 years. And it would have caused a gigantic world crisis, both at home and abroad. But we reached an agreement. We shook hands, said, here's the deal. Well, now this fall, the MAGA extremists once again have brought us to the brink, this time to a government shutdown, and going back on the deal they made months ago, not keeping their word. Enough is enough is enough. This is not that complicated. The brinkmanship has to end, and there shouldn't be another crisis. There's no excuse for another crisis. Consequently, I strongly urge my Republican friends in Congress not to wait. Don't waste time as you did all summer. Pass a year-long budget agreement. Honor the deal we made a few months ago. We have the strongest economy in the world today. The strongest economy in the world today. We have more to do. But we are the indispensable nation in the world, internationally and domestically, in terms of our economy. Let's act like it. Let's act like it. Stop the games. Get to work. Make sure the American people and our allies and friends around the world know what we're doing. Thank you.
Mr. President, Speaker McCarthy's speakership is now at risk. Should Democrats vote to help him keep that job?
I don't have a vote on that matter. I'll leave that to the leadership of the House and the Senate.
Mr. President, what are your words to U.S. allies, and in particular Zelensky, on continued funding for Ukraine? How can you reassure them?
I can reassure them, look at me. We're going to get it done. I can't believe those who have voted for supporting Ukraine, overwhelming majority in the House and Senate, Democrat and Republican, will, for pure political reasons, let more people die needlessly in Ukraine.
And Mr. President, a follow-up on Ukraine, what is your sense of when the current U.S. funding might run out, and how much urgency is there? What's the timeline in the next couple weeks or months?
We have time, not much time, and there's this overwhelming sense of urgency.
Mr. President, are you going to be able to trust Speaker McCarthy when the next deal comes around?
We just made one about Ukraine, so we'll find out.
But are you worried that he is going to be forced by fellow Republicans to back away from any deal he cuts with you?
I hope this experience for the Speaker has been one of a personal revelation. I'm not being facetious.
Anyway. Are you concerned about America's reputation on the world stage, given the level of brinksmanship we've seen this year?
Based on the mega Republican report, yes. Based on what my administration is doing, no. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.